Hi, Amy.
Tabby.
Last night was Before the 90 Days, Season 7, Episode 22, also known as the Tell-All Part 3.
Yeah, they definitely could have put 3 and 4 together in one or normal
What?
tell-all, but why would
What?
they?
What are they playing at? Why only 1 hour this week and only 1 hour next week? Why not just give us a three-parter, put us all out of our misery, and give us something that's at least a little bit substantial instead of just a flaky 1 hour show?
And it wasn't even an hour.
No, 42 minutes, 30 seconds, to
But
be
at least
precise.
we didn't have those little breaks in between the
Yeah.
recording, when they go backstage. And that was something, but otherwise this was so incredibly boring.
It was. And why didn't they give us those two shows together so that we have something substantial so that we can move on to the next show? What are they playing at with all this garbage? There's no content.
I have absolutely no idea. They're going to lose more viewers than they're going to gain.
Yeah, because nothing really substantive happened in this episode. We didn't learn anything extremely shocking or eye-opening that would have made it worthwhile to invest our 42 minutes and 30 seconds.
I agree. Yes.
Well,
Lowering.
let's forge ahead with 3 notes before we begin. Please rate us and follow us wherever you listen to this podcast. If you prefer to watch, head over to YouTube, look for our channel at 90 Day Fiancé Honestly. And finally, our subscriber-only content has launched. Please join us for our in-depth discussion of Season 2 of The Last Resort. And by the way, we also discuss Between the Sheets, so it's kind of a 2-for-1. And this show is only available through Apple and Spotify. Alrighty then, let's begin.
All right.
We start with the standoff between Niles and Adnan concluding. At last, they had this very tense moment where it looked like they would almost come to blows, but security has separated them. So that's over, thankfully. And Vanya, always the voice of reason, comes over to Niles and says, "Don't let this guy rile you up. He's not worth it." Sound advice.
Mm-hmm.
That's about it. But nothing. Moving on. We talk once more to Vanya, but this time instead of Bojo, we're mostly focusing on Josko, who has joined in the conversation from Croatia, and their marital status, I was going to say. Their relationship status is
Non-existent.
exactly. No longer together. Wah wah. Sad for Vanya, but if this is not the guy for her, then this is not the guy, and she's better off, right?
Yes, definitely. She deserves someone better, someone who's going to be fully invested in her, who's not going to be making excuses and talking in circles and mistreat her.
Yeah.
She deserves so much better.
As a recap, we remember that last time we spoke to Vanya about the status of their relationship, she was saying that things weren't going well with Josko because he seemed to be wanting her to be more of a mother figure than she was prepared to be at the moment, or there was some miscommunication with the whole parenting issue that didn't really seem like it had either resolved itself in a way that made sense, or that Josko was being reasonable with what Vanya's point of view on the situation was. Because she was just kind of perplexed and confused and didn't know why he was shutting her down so quickly when she was open to the idea of welcoming this little boy of his into her life. So we get his perspective this week, which is great. And that is, he thinks Vanya never really asked about his son. So that for him was a red flag. And Vanya didn't like it when she wouldn't conform to his idea of what a prospective stepmom should be acting like. So Josko felt that she wanted to be the center of Josko's world, which he can't do because his son is really the center of his world. So they've got a little bit of a difference in priorities, I guess you'd say. But it seems like such a nothing reason to break up, because couldn't you just clarify this with each other, discuss it a little bit further and say, this is how I see it and this is how you see it, and maybe we're just misunderstanding each other. We can come to a middle ground somehow. But no.
No, I thought his explanation at first sounded great, but then he pulls the whole, she never asks about the kid and he didn't like that, and it just seemed like all of the excuses were mounting and all seemed to be revolved around the kid, but it was like it could have made sense, but it didn't make any sense coming out of his mouth. And
Yeah.
when he said that she never asks about the kid, you guys have been talking for quite a while now. Don't you think that you would have noticed that previously?
Yeah, this seemed to only be when he went back to Croatia after his visit to Orlando and they were talking on video chat. And she wasn't asking the questions that he expected her to ask. And then he was making time for his son when his son got sick. And she didn't like that, according to him. We never heard from her what her perspective was. But there was definitely some kind of judgment on his part for the way that she acted and how he expected her to act. And from her side, maybe she just wasn't communicating how open she was to the idea of this little boy coming into her life. Or perhaps it was still a remnant of her last relationship where she had developed a deep connection with the daughter of her partner. And then that relationship obviously was completely destroyed. And so she felt bereft when she had to give up both her boyfriend as well as his daughter. So maybe she's got a little bit of fear there still lingering.
I feel like a little bit of communication would have gone very far with these two.
Yeah, especially when we hear that Vanya had actually prepared to turn one of the rooms in her house into the little
Dancing
boy's room.
room.
Yeah, she was going to make a space for him so that when he came over with Josko, he had his own little room, which is fantastic. And I think that would have been a really positive sign for Josko to know that she's serious, but either he didn't know about it or he didn't care. It's not clear. I don't know what more he could have expected from her.
I don't know. I got the feeling that he was just in it for the sex, especially with how vile he was speaking about it. And
okay. Let's talk about that.
Okay. So he makes a comment that he didn't know if she was too small or if he was just too big. And I'm like, oh, okay, great. We're going to talk about your big hog now, are we? Is that what we're getting at? And then he said, they could only do 2 positions, which I think was definitely oversharing. It made Vanya very, very uncomfortable, and he made her sound so much like an object.
Yeah.
And then it comes out that he had recorded her during a moment of intimacy without her consent, which is a massive, massive violation.
That was truly awful. And I really felt for her in that moment. I wondered, is somebody going to be pressing charges here? Because this is something that you could get a criminal record for. It's totally illegal to film your partner without their knowledge, especially during an intimate act. Just an awful breach of trust, of confidence, I mean, it's an incredible violation of your body, your personal space, all of that. But going back to the incredible detail that he gave about their sex life, yes, I agree with you that it gives a lot of validation to the fact that perhaps he was just using her at this point in the relationship, because he didn't pressure her to begin with when they were still in Croatia to have sex with him. So I don't think that was his initial incentive, shall we say?
Yes.
But perhaps that's what it came down to. Maybe he was uncomfortable with the whole stepmother to be aspect of their relationship. And so it became more just about the sex, because he did mention that they were engaging 3 or 4 times a day, I think, is one of the wonderful details that he shared with us, which, yes, was definitely oversharing. Like, I would have felt so incredibly embarrassed and violated if somebody just went ahead and gave all those details to a national audience on TV, international audience on TV, without asking me first if that was okay.
And the fact that Sean actually asked, well, how was the sex? Well, this is a relationship show. We don't really need to talk about the sex.
That was a bad question. I have to go back to our tried and true theme of not really thinking that Sean is the best host for this show, because she really failed on a couple of points so far as we've been going through the tell-all.
A couple?
Yeah, I'm just going to say a couple. And one is asking inappropriate questions like this one. And I think there was one that she asked, was it of Ingrid? I remember you pointing it out in one of the beginning shows. And I was like, yeah, absolutely. She should not. Or maybe it was Niles. Doesn't matter. Inappropriate questions. And then secondly, not defending Niles or not shutting up Adnan the numerous times that he kind of got onto a pile up, a gang up on other members of the cast and was ruthlessly bullying them with no cause. And she did not pipe up. She said nothing.
No, she didn't. She didn't
And
control the panel.
yeah, yeah. And I
Failure.
think that's one of her prime responsibilities is to make sure that all of the cast members are comfortable and that we don't end up beating each other up verbally, psychologically, any which way. And she failed miserably at that, which I found really difficult to take.
It was hard to watch, just knowing that it was almost like a free-for-all.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And then in Vanya's case, asking about their sex life, which we don't need to know about in detail or even at all. We're more interested in their relationship, how it's going, and why it fell apart, if that's the case. Why would she ask this question unless she knew something already about the answers that were about to be given, i.e., she already knew that Josko was prepared to divulge horrific details which were very salacious and not really fit for TV, but which would explode on the screen. Or maybe if she knew about this secret videotape that he had made and wanted Vanya to bring that to light. Either way, it's an appalling situation. And all it does is makes Vanya the kind of the dirty sex object, which she is not. She engaged in a consensual sexual relationship with a man that she was involved with, that she was having a romantic relationship with, and he violated her trust by filming her without her consent. And whatever else happened between the two of them is their business. It's not ours.
I thought it was just revolting. Why would you ask that question? You could see how upset it made her. Why would you not change the subject? Why would you double down? Why would you not stop him from speaking?
Well, it did reveal who he is, which I think was important because after all, we do want to know why it is that he was so awful, why it is that they should not be together anymore. And I'm relieved for Vanya's sake that they're not together anymore, because who would want to be with somebody who would do this to you, who would abuse your trust so blatantly?
I've actually had an ex do that before.
Oh my God.
Yeah. And afterwards he was like, I'm so sorry I took this video. And I'm like, you're deleting that immediately. Oh yeah. I'm so sorry. I wasn't thinking. And I'm like, no, you weren't thinking. You didn't have my consent. And he worked in a profession where consent is prevalent.
Oh. Yeah.
So I really felt for Vanya in this situation. It really brought me back to that time where I also felt like an object.
Yeah.
Why
it's
would you ever think
dehumanizing.
that's okay? Yeah.
She did have Josko delete the video. Great. I'm glad. And Sean confirmed that any copies on the cloud were also eliminated. Good. I don't know how you can trust that 100% after somebody does that to you, but I guess you don't have a choice.
Because it's not the cloud. Does it get backed up to a backup of the cloud?
Yeah, exactly. We also found out that Vanya did, in fact, go back to Croatia for that trip that she had already planned at the point when Josko broke up with her. They did hang out. Nothing really happened except for one kiss, and they did not repair their relationship. So they are still in this same status of not being together.
I kind of do agree with him that, it was better off that they didn't see each other again, because I think that would have just elongated the inevitable.
Yeah.
My heart also broke for her because, she talked about how sexual intimacy, how much she values that, and how obviously she's not just going around sleeping with everyone. This is very special to her. And on top of the violation, it was just, she probably feels guilty that she put herself in that situation. and that he put her in that situation.
I thought it was ironic that Adnan was coming to her defense against Josko in this instance. Niles was as well. He was also defending Vanya. But for all of the nastiness that Adnan has spewed in the last few episodes, especially about Vanya and her choices and her body, I was like, it was so blatantly obvious that he's just after the audience's sympathy and the audience's attention on himself and not on her or not on anybody else for that reason. For that, what's the expression?
Self-serving?
Yes, it's self-serving. Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
He was totally self-serving. And I found that disappointing, but not surprising. And I thought it was sweet of Niles to defend Vanya and try to give Josko his comeuppance for his behavior.
I actually made the comment in my notes that Niles was really taking his job as host very seriously.
He was doing a good job.
He did an excellent job.
Yeah.
I was very impressed with him and the support that he provided her. I thought that was great.
Do you want to move on?
Do I? No, but will we? Yes.
Let's turn to Veah and Sunny and all things Rory, because it's time to talk about him. Now, Veah claims that she asked other people to go with her to South Africa, but nobody was available except for Rory. Do we believe this?
No.
Okay, I'm glad, because I was on that page too. I was like, I don't think so.
What other friends?
Yeah. Well, she did have a couple that she talked to in the first episode where we met her. Remember, one was explaining about how, was it the currency is different, or it's something very basic about South Africa. And Veah was like, oh, I didn't know that.
But wasn't Veah the one that tried to pay for like a pineapple stick with, it was Veah.
Apple Pay.
With her Apple Pay, and then she had to call Rory because she didn't have any actual currency.
Yeah. Okay, so Veah doesn't regret having brought Rory with her to South Africa, despite all of the issues that it caused initially in her relationship with Sunny. And Sunny doesn't really care one way or the other anymore. He seems to be over it. This, I felt, was a whole lot of nothing. This was one of those segments that was like, why are we even going over this again? Because Veah, Sunny, and Rory are all completely comfortable with the status of everybody's relationship within this triangle of people. There's friendships, there's a relationship, and there's no confusion between any of these three people as to what their roles are. So why are we discussing this again?
I think the biggest moment, well, the second biggest moment was when Sunny was saying that she will convert. She will convert. And I can see him like getting married to her and being like, oh, it's not that big of a deal. And then afterwards turning into his father.
Yeah.
And forcing her into it.
But we mostly focused on the fact that Rory was a friend of Veah's, and then the cast was like, oh, she shouldn't be friends with him anymore, especially Adnan, of course, giving absolutely stellar advice, which is as judgmental as can possibly be, says to her that it's not right that she should have these two men in her life and she should choose between them. Like, get lost, Adnan. She's allowed to have a friend who is a man, as well as a relationship with a man. Your brain is so small, to use his language, that he can't even understand the concept of a person being able to be friends with one gender and in a relationship with the same gender, with two separate people.
Blows my mind. How?
Whoa, what a concept. Oh, heavens above.
Speaking of, Adnan's reaction to Rory's door opening. Oh, the door. Oh, the door. He just starts freaking out about it. It seemed as though he was witnessing like a paranormal event.
I did think it was a ghost. I was like, what the heck is going on there? And it was so cute when it was just the dogs coming in.
I thought it was going to be a cat. So I was like, ooh, let me see a cat. I didn't see you. I didn't see you as a cat dude. Yeah. And then it was two dogs. And at one point, the one dog was licking the other's face. It was so cute.
It was. I was watching them too.
I think that was the highlight of this entire episode. Well,
the one question that we did get answered, which you and I had both talked about when we first met Rory, was the social media issue. We found out why Rory had been sending those smiley emojis or laughing, I guess they're laughing emojis, to Sunny's social media when Sunny was posting pictures of himself. And there was, again, there was nothing there. There was no content. It was just regular stuff. Yeah, I was poking the bear a little bit. That's all. So what? Nobody's hurt. Nobody's offended. Everybody moved on. They're fine. Okay.
Great. I kind of feel like, when my dad was on Facebook and he would randomly like someone's post that he didn't know. Because Veah said that Rory doesn't like the internet anyway. So I can see him not being fluent in social media etiquette.
Yeah. Yeah. Shall we read on? Loren and Faith are the final couple in this hot seat this week. Esther comes back. To me, she sounded totally like a person who has drunk the Loren Kool-Aid. She's firmly entrenched in the cult of Loren.
I think she's in love with him.
Precisely. There has to be a reason why she's defending him so vehemently and acting against all reason and all good sense in taking his side of things.
And I love that Niles popped up. And so I told Esther that she's making herself look bad.
Yes.
By defending Loren.
Yeah.
Yes, Niles. He was so on point.
He was. They discussed a little bit about the flirting outside of the club incident, and this was so freaking confusing. Loren changed his story second by second.
Which he did after the event as well.
First it was a mistake, then it was flirting, then it was nothing, then it was trying not to be rude, then it was a miscommunication.
But don't forget, first it was a drag queen, and then it was like a teenage girl.
And then it was somebody across the street, and then it was a person in the parking lot. It was all over the place. It was so clearly, he was flailing around in his lies. He didn't know which one to grab onto. Total mishmash, ridiculousness, exposes him for who he truly is. And all the meantime, Esther is defending him. Great, I guess. While Faith is clearly very hurt over all of this because she breaks down in tears. Meanwhile, Loren says, I have completely changed in every way. What? No, you haven't, Loren. He's exactly the same person. And then when they go on to talk about this vacation that he's planned for them in Thailand, we find out that he hasn't even talked to Faith about the most crucial element of this vacation, which is that he plans for them to get married while they're in Thailand. She doesn't know about that. So not so much change, Loren, after all, right?
No,
in fact,
let's just go and then let me try to manipulate you into doing this. And this was before same-sex marriages were legal in Thailand. And even if they were, they're not recognized in the Philippines.
I know, I don't understand. But he did say, I can get the K3 visa once we get married in Thailand. So I think his intent was that he would have brought Faith back to the US. But she thwarts everything by saying, no marriage. It's not on the table. And when she's asked if there's a future for them, she seems very, very, very reluctant. And she does say no eventually. I'm so glad that she got to this point of being able to say no. And the fact that Esther was pushing Faith quite aggressively to give her response immediately on the spot, even though it was very obvious that Faith did not want to be talking about this, that she was not prepared to make this decision.
She was really struggling with her words.
But Esther kept pushing her to the point where Faith just said, you know what? No, it's not happening. Which I guess was Esther's point. She wanted her to get to that point where she would say no, so that Loren is then a free
waste of space
agent.
Okay.
Wow, my brain is slow today. That's unprecedented. Okay, so yeah, Esther clearly has her own MO. She has her own reasons for why she's acting this way. It became very, very clear on watching their segment. But yay, Faith says no to Loren, and it looks like that concludes their relationship, although who knows what happened after the tell-all.
Yeah. I was like, is she actually going to break up with him during the tell-all? Because if so, yay!
It did look like that. It really did.
There's still one episode left, so now we have to wait to see if she's going to waver on it.
Yeah, well, didn't we see in the preview for next week that Loren was crying? He was doing his crocodile tears act for one of the women to try to garner sympathy.
I don't know. I just hope it wasn't Vanya, because that's not going to go very far for him.
But anyway, as I said, nothing much of any consequence happened. We were treated to an absolute boring show this week.
But Adnan did say something, probably the only thing that I've appreciated, maybe the second that I've ever appreciated.
Okay.
He told Faith that losing Loren is not like losing a diamond or $1 million, because Loren is nothing. She has lost nothing. Okay? Thank you, Adnan, for that.
I can appreciate that on the surface of things, but it totally disregards any emotions that she has and all of the investment that she's made in the relationship. So while I can appreciate his comment as being supportive of Faith, I still find it pretty callous, because it's just not acknowledging that she is going to be devastated by this, and she's got to go through the whole process of the breakup now, recovering, getting better, and then looking for a new love, which for her must be incredibly difficult.
I can appreciate that as well. I think that was the closest thing that we've seen come from him that even remotely appeared to be compassion.
Yeah.
Even though he has absolutely no emotional intelligence in any capacity, and he would never be able to assess how she feels and how the fallout is actually going to look for her.
Yeah.
He's just, you didn't lose $1 million.
Yeah, I think he's just serving up platitudes for airtime.
Perhaps, but it was supportive, and it also shit on Loren. So
yay,
that's great.
Okay.
And something else I noticed is, remember last week I mentioned about the gashes on Brian's arms? Did you notice those?
No.
They might be scars.
Okay.
I kept an eye out for them, and they didn't look like scabby. So I think they might have been scars. So I think I was incorrect.
Okay.
But I was keeping an eye out for that, because I'm like, he had to have been in an accident or something, but it could have just been scars.
Yeah. Any other further notes?
This was so incredibly boring.
Agreed.
I could not believe it. I forgot I was watching it, and I went to go clean the kitchen. And then I came back. I was like, oh, shoot. I have to actually pay attention to this. So it took me a lot longer to watch it. But I cleaned my kitchen.
This is great news. I'm so glad something positive happened this week. Amy's kitchen is clean. Yeah, I was just in shock that it was only an hour. And then when I looked up this week to see how long next week's episode would be, again, seeing that it's an hour long, I just went, come on, guys. Stop jerking us around like this.
Yeah. I mean, it could have been a scheduling issue, like maybe the show that's on afterwards, like it just didn't have the opportunity to extend it. But then why wouldn't you plan for it before it airs? I think it's just frustrating that we have 4 episodes of something that could have been, I want to use the word truncated, into 2 shows instead of 4.
Beautiful. Cut out all the Adnan bullshit. It would have been 2 shows, and it would have been great. I'm bored. I want to go home.
Yeah.
And I want to say this to TLC. That's what I think.
Very succinct.
Of your editing. It's horrific. All right, I think we've said our piece. Shall we say goodbye? Before we go, if you're enjoying the 90 Day Fiancé Honestly podcast, please subscribe to or give our show a follow. And if you have an additional moment, please rate us and help other 90 Day fans to find our show. Thanks for listening.
Thanks, everyone.
See you next week.